Good afternoon, everyone. We are getting ready to do the YouTube simulcast of Dan Simpson's Periscope. He's going to Periscope the Anthony Magnabosco talk with the Chicago Atheists, and I believe the title is "What I Have Learned" or "Things I Have Learned." Anthony, if you don't know, is sort of a pioneer in the practice of street epistemology, although the idea stems from a 2013 book by Dr. Peter Prigozhin called A Manual for Creating Atheists. Anthony, good afternoon, everyone. Has taken sort of we are getting ready to do the YouTube simulcast of Dan Simpson's Periscope. All right, so sorry about that. And so anyway, 2013, Peter Prigozhin wrote a book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. Anthony Magnabosco read it, and like many of us, found our conversations being changed at the very minimum, and then after a while, as we start to realize sort of the power behind these ideas and justifying what we just believe with some actual facts, it actually makes a humongous impact on your life. So I'm going to go ahead and jump out of here. Dan will be jumping in a few minutes. His feed should start right on time. He said about 10 minutes, and that was about 8 minutes ago. So stand by. Glad to have you if you're here. If you want to watch it in real time, or if you'd rather watch it on Periscope, the user to follow is Dan Simpson, and just a thank you to Dan for allowing me to do this. Anthony thought he was going to be able to stream it himself, but he's not, and I think that's fair. We should give him a pass. He can't do everything, right? He can't be the technical director and the speaker. So we appreciate Dan not only streaming it so that we can watch it, but allowing me to sort of simulcast it here. So again, it's live on Periscope. Dan Simpson is the user you can follow. And after this, if you are into sort of discussions of morality, you need to check out the Cordial Curiosity channel. Reed just had a great conversation with the YouTube channel Friended, and it was a really, really good talk. Like I only have a few more minutes to go on to finish that talk, and I almost didn't want to come do this because I was so into that. So anyway, that's it for now, and I'm just going to leave this here. When Dan comes on, I will switch over to his feed. Like I only have a few more minutes to go on to finish that talk, and I almost didn't want to come do this because I was so into that. So anyway, that's it for now, and I'm just going to leave this here. When Dan comes on, I will switch over to his feed.
Viewers, how are you?
Like
welcome to beautiful,
a few more minutes to go on,
partly cloudy, mostly sunny Chicago. Hey JK, I'm here at the Ethical Humanist Society
that's it for now, and,
here in Chicago.
Really,
it's Skokie. You get the idea. Yeah. Hey y'all, what's up? So, I'm here. I'm about to see a chat with Magnabosco. We had a Magnabosco sighting just a moment ago. I just said hi. What a nice guy. What a handsome guy that is. He's a good-looking guy. Better looking in person. Hey, Josh. Too bad y'all couldn't make it. I dab Simpson. Not yet. I don't really do dabs. I'll try to get an autograph. Wow, they're shooting off fireworks here. They're very excited for Anthony Magnabosco's chat. And so am I. I'm super stoked. These people are driving past looking like they don't understand what the fuck I'm doing, but get used to it. Live scoping. Ethical Humanist Society. I'm going to go live in about, I don't know, y'all. About 10 minutes, I'm going live with the chat with the Magnabosco man. I'm scoping it live. I'm going to go. I'm checking out now. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Peace. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Hey, replay viewers. How are you? Welcome to beautiful, partly cloudy, mostly sunny Chicago. Hey, JK. I'm here at the Ethical Humanist Society here in Chicago. Really, it's Skokie. You get the idea. Yeah. Hey, y'all. What's up? So, I'm here. I'm about to see a chat with Magnabosco. We had a Magnabosco sighting just a moment ago. I just said hi. What a nice guy. What a handsome guy that is. He's a good-looking guy. Better looking in person. Hey, Josh. Too bad y'all couldn't make it. I dab Simpson. Not yet. I don't really do dabs. I'll try to get an autograph. Wow, they're shooting off fireworks here. They're very excited for Anthony Magnabosco's chat. And so am I. I'm super stoked. These people are driving past looking like they don't understand what the fuck I'm doing, but get used to it. Live scoping. Ethical Humanist Society. I'm going to go live in about, I don't know, y'all. About 10 minutes, I'm going live with the chat with the Magnabosco man. I'm scoping it live. I'm going to go. I'm checking out now. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Peace. Yeah.
questions for us, or if you want to get in touch, just come see me after. That's pretty much it. Anthony's going to take it over. He's going to let you know about the hashtag and how to get in touch with him and a lot of his information. So, Anthony Magnabosco.
He's my hero.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Good? All right, awesome. Thank you for coming. Bethany mentioned that there's a hashtag, so there are people, we're filming this and we're doing this live, and we're live streaming it as well. Dan is live streaming it using the hashtag AskSE. So if you are reluctant to ask a question to me during the Q&A, you can tweet using that hashtag. And please try to form them in a question as briefly as possible. Pretend that you're tweeting to me a question in 140 characters. That will make it a lot easier when I'm editing the video, and I can place your question on top of the video, and people that are watching it can see it. Okay. And there's a lot to cover. I'm very excited to be here. This talk is the culmination of the last 3 years of my going out on the street and talking to people using Peter Boghossian's Street Epistemology. This talk is less of a how-to. You're not going to really learn how to use SE. There are countless resources out there now. Society. Bethany Futrell and I had nearly 100 emails going back and forth to communicate and coordinate this discussion. This discussion wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Dan Simpson, who back in November of 2016 suggested that I come and speak to your group. So thank you very much, Dan, for doing that. If you're not following him on Twitter, please do. He live streams all the time and is a great proponent of Street Epistemology. I have to, of course, thank Steve, Kristen, and Trent as well for coming in early and helping me set up the podium. There's a lot of moving parts going on, so we can capture this and share it on YouTube. I also want to just very quickly thank my family. I've put a lot of things on the back burner with my family to prepare for this talk, so thank you guys. I'm originally from the Chicago area. I grew up on the South Side, a Catholic Italian neighborhood. And I barely believed. I just never really bought into the whole God stuff, which was a big deal to my family. They were worried. I was the oldest of 4 kids. But one thing today that I notice, especially as I look around and what's happening in the world, is that the beliefs that people hold, when they're based on supernatural claims, like a God existing or karma is real or that there's a ghost squeaking their cabinet, that these beliefs motivate people to do some pretty horrible things. Sure, they do some good things, but oftentimes they will do some things that actually end up hurting people. One of the common question I always get is, why do you do this? Why did you spend the last 3 years going out on the street and talking to people and promoting street epistemology? It's because I see the harm that these beliefs cause, and I think SE is probably the best way to help uncover the justifications that people have for the beliefs that they hold. I'm dedicating this talk to my friend Nardo. He, as a childhood friend of mine, passed away 2 months ago. I was actually here in Chicago 2 months ago for his funeral, and I was surprised that a family member had mentioned that, and my friend was always a deist as far as I knew, but on his deathbed, apparently his close relative communicated that he converted. He was afraid and reached out to Jesus. I knew my friend well enough to know that he would have been livid if he were to have heard somebody else doing that to somebody else. So these beliefs that people hold actually do have profound implications. All right, I want to go over the schedule for today. Do you guys see a meet and greet? Is that showing right now?
Yeah.
Okay, I told you a little bit about myself. I want to know about you. I want to ask you a couple questions, just show of hand type of survey thing. We're going to really explore what sets street epistemology apart, what it is, and why it's important. It's gaining momentum. It seems like more and more people, particularly in the atheist movement, seem to be aware of it, seem to be accepting it, and seem to be using it. We'll talk about that. And then, I'm a very visual person, so because I've been taking some time to think about how all this works, I developed a little, we're going to be building a model using some blocks. Okay, so I'll be stacking them up here, we'll be talking about them. I'm not doing that to insult your intelligence, but I think it might help convey what's happening here to the audience and the people that will be watching this video. Okay. Before we can, you probably have noticed this if you watched any of my videos, that oftentimes people will raise barriers that prevent you from even having the conversation in the first place. And we'll talk about that. And then we'll wrap things up, and then we'll end with some question and answer sessions. And again, please use that hashtag AskSE. You don't even have to tweet at me, just use the hashtag. And Bethany will be compiling those and asking your question possibly. Okay, quick survey, just show of hands. I want to get a sense of who's here watching. Who here is familiar with street epistemology? Okay, that's good. I'd say that's 60%, maybe 75% of people. Of those people that raised your hand, how many people have gone and attempted to use street epistemology? Doesn't have to be on the street, maybe just one-on-one over social media. Okay, about a third of that number. Okay, that's fine. All right, who here does not believe in any gods, deistic or otherwise? Show of hands. Almost everybody. Okay. Who here does believe in a god or gods, deistic or otherwise? Nobody. Okay, maybe, okay. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. All right, for those of you who used to believe in a god and no longer do, did you find that other beliefs that you held changed after you discarded your God belief? Okay, I see some hands going up too. Quite a few hands. Okay. Those ancillary beliefs that were based on God beliefs. Okay, a lot of people. Well, that's good. That's sort of my understanding too, that once that God belief falls away, everything else kind of falls off too. All right. So, I've had hundreds of chats with people, over 1,000, where I would initiate talks with believers to see what they believe and why, and how do they conclude that it's true. And I've given many presentations on street epistemology. I'd say this is probably my 8th or 9th talk on the topic. I've had the good fortune of being invited on a couple of podcasts like The Thinking Atheist and Hemant Mehta's The Friendly Atheist. I was on Cognitive Dissonance 2 days ago doing an interview with them. Even the David Pakman Show did a short little interview. But I want to just say that while where's my mouse here? Here we go. While I'm qualified to speak about street epistemology, I'm not the person who dictates what it is. Okay, I want to be very clear. This talk is based on my observations. They're not proclamations of what street epistemology should be. I think that this movement, that seems to be growing and gaining, is robust because we're getting pushback within our own community of what this should be and where it should go. Okay, so I may be saying some things that not everybody in the movement agrees with, or not everybody that is familiar with SE agrees with. This talk is also based on increasing evidence from people researching related domains of thought. I'm going to be bringing up 2 studies that show that street epistemology is probably the better way to approaching a person about their deeply held belief. Okay. Well, of course, this all started with Boghossian's book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. It came out in 2013. He's the father of street epistemology. Yeah, it's been a while. In fact, I think we're giving away some signed books of Boghossian's. I'm not exactly sure how that's happening. We've got 5 signed books by Peter. There'll be a raffle. We'll be giving that out. When I was instantly enamored with it. I thought, okay, here's a guy who's saying that the way that we're talking with believers is fruitless if we're arguing with them. And it's actually making their epistemic situation worse. And it seemed to make sense, because it was quite in line with my experience when I was arguing with my family members. And I have people in my family that barely talk to me today because I was very aggressive with them. So his point was, don't argue, but focus on the method being used. So it's a conversational tool to uncover the reliability of the method that people are using to form their beliefs. His book is very heavy on faith, and every talk I give, I try to be very clear to say that SE can be used for things way beyond just God beliefs and supernatural claims. But this talk in particular will be heavy on faith. His book was heavy on faith, and this talk will be heavy on faith. And you'll see why in a little bit. All right. You pretty much can't go anywhere about talking about SE when somebody wants to question the belief scale. You know, that where are you in terms of your confidence that the belief is true from 0 to 100? And a lot of people get hung up on it. First of all, the belief scale is simply a crude attempt to get a sense of where a person is at, on how sure they are that their belief is true. And it's optional. You don't have to do it. I've had people say, that's stupid, I don't want to put my belief on a scale. Fine, move on, no problem. But right now, we don't know of a better way. At least we're trying to measure or quantify the progress that we're making with an individual. So I just want to pop in on that. I think a lot of people get sidetracked on the scale, and is it good, and is it bad, and is it reliable? I mean, we are relying on people to self-report a number before and after the talk. They could be lying to us. We're not saying that this is the best and one and only way that it should be done. So I just wanted to address that. I think that's important. Okay. Street epistemology also appears to be remarkably effective. For anyone that's watched the videos that are popping up on YouTube, not just mine, but other people, or people live streaming, usually within 5 to 10 minutes, you can see the person taking a break, they're thinking about their belief. You can see that light bulb moment of doubt across their face or their body language. It's wild. There's nothing like it. If you've ever had a conversation where you've used these approaches and you've seen that, it's a rush to see. Instant change, of course, is unlikely. This is about placing a pebble in a person's shoe, giving them something to think about, to chew on, and ponder and say, why do I have that belief in my mind? And is the method that I used to think that that thing is true, is that reliable? Okay. Of course, I also have to point out that SE, what you see on my YouTube channel is I initiate talks. You don't have to do that. You can wait. Just wait till they organically happen. But I found that initiating the talks is practice. It helps you get better at it. So when those organic situations occur, you'll be ready. Okay. Fundamentally, though, street epistemology is about helping people. And I remember I was mentioning we're going to be playing with blocks. Well, this green block here represents the person. This is the most important part of the belief. We are really focused on respecting the person, but challenging the belief. And when it's a deeply held belief, it's hard to differentiate those two oftentimes. And I've got a couple of graphics that show that, see what's happening in the brain. Somebody had mentioned on my YouTube comments once that, Anthony, you do such a good job of making people comfortably uncomfortable. And I thought that, I almost titled this presentation that, because I just think that was just such a great way of summarizing what happens. You want to make a person comfortable enough to feel open to share these thoughts that they have with you, but uncomfortable enough where they're stepping away from the belief and examining it and thinking about it and being open to possibly even revising their belief. I love that. Okay. This is probably the goofiest looking pie chart, but this does make sense. So we've got how, what, and why. Take a step back here. People have been watching videos, they've been contacting me, experts, people that are experts in various disciplines. One person in particular is a PhD student who's researching linguistics. Linguistics PhD student who is just fascinated by what's happening in these videos, and like, what is different? What's technically, what's happening with the words they're using and the pauses and all this stuff. So I've been having a dialogue with her, and that actually got me thinking, well, yeah, what is it about? What is going on there? We've had some people that were transcribing the videos, and just the act of reading the conversation as opposed to watching it was like, it was a light bulb moment for me. It's like, whoa, there's something really interesting going on here. And I think what's going on here is the types of questions that we're asking, and I have 3 categories here. How type questions, what type questions, and why type questions. If you want to know what these percentages are, I didn't go through every video and count these up, but roughly, I think in order for a conversation to be a good street epistemology related conversation, I'm thinking 10% of your questions should be related to what they believe. It doesn't have to start with the question what, the word what. What does the person believe? Why do they believe it? That's about 20% important. But the majority of the conversations that make them unique, help the person think about the belief, I think, are these how-related questions. And we're going to really get down into what those are. This is not a hard and fast rule. Okay, don't say, well, Anthony said I can only do 10% of my questions. What questions? No. But I think that's what's going on, what makes this unique. This is something that should be researched further, okay? But go with it here with me. Okay, so the first types of questions I think are going on are these what-related questions. What do you believe and why? We have to understand what the person believes, and I'm using this silver block to represent a supernatural belief like God. Silver, it's special. Okay, so we got our God belief. We need to know what the person believes in order to inspect it with them, right? And that belief can be very tied to their identity. What type of questions help us understand the claim, the meaning of words, one's certainty? Well, what questions are important? Don't spend too much time here. How many times have you argued with a Jehovah's Witness about blood transfusions, or you talk with a Muslim and the first thing that you talk about is that Muhammad married a young girl, okay? Or Mormons shouldn't drink alcohol. Those are all what the person believes. Sure, it's good to know what their definition of God is, but I wouldn't get too hung up on it. Okay, here's an example of a what type question. What do you believe? Would you define that word for me? Notice it doesn't start with the word what. Okay. How confident are you that this belief is true? Knowing where a person is in terms of their confidence is a what-related question. It helps me get a sense of what they believe. How committed to it are they? Okay, the second part are these why-related questions. And these identify the justifications that people usually give for their belief. Now, we can get into whether or not they form the belief first and they're presenting the justifications, or these really are the reasons, the justifications for the belief. That's a whole other topic, and one that's very interesting too. But I want to represent those with these blue blocks. Okay? These blocks represent the type of why questions. What I found is when you ask a why type question, usually the person will give you a what answer. If you ever listen to the Atheist Experience and they ask, why do you believe that? Listen for the caller to tell them what he believes. It's very interesting. Okay, so here's a couple of sample questions here. Let's go next here. All right, why do you think a God exists? What makes you think that this belief is true? That's still a why type question. I want to understand why they believe it. Can I get your best example? Okay. So I've had a lot of conversations with people, and I wanted to somewhat mimic a talk that I had with somebody using these blue blocks. I had a person once say that the belief was fed to me as a child. Right? So I asked, why do you believe it? It was fed to me as a child. Okay. else do you believe it? I was involved in a serious rollover accident and I survived it. That's another reason why I think my God is real. Right? Another one they might say is, just look at the human eye. It's so complex, it had to have been designed. All right? These are the reasons why the person believes in the God. Okay. Most atheists, and again, this talk is, as it can be used for anything, this talk is really about God beliefs. Where most atheists, I think, veer off track is focusing on these. Actually, almost not focusing on these. We can't seem to stop asking why questions. Okay? A good example of that might be, we say, the person might say, well, look at the eye, it's so amazingly complex. We might come back and say, well, the complexity of the eye is due to evolution. And they may come back and say, well, microevolution, yes, but certainly not macroevolution. Okay, do you see how we're adding on? And then we may come back and say, macro, is the same damn thing. The only difference is time. You do realize that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, right? And they may come back and say, well, they carbon dated a snail, and that snail was millions of years old. Okay, you see how we're piling on and we're not peeling back? I see this all the time in conversations with atheists and believers. Let me just remove those two. Pull that back. There's one more special justification that I see time and time again in these conversations. And it almost always comes down to faith. I believe it because it was fed to me as a child. A good question might be, has everything that you've been taught turned out to be true? No. Okay. Go. Nice. I survived a rollover accident, so I know that my God helped me. If we were to look at the statistics of rollover accidents and realize to your satisfaction that they were actually quite common, surviving it, would you still believe in the God? Yeah, of course I would. Okay, very nice. Just look at the complexity of the human eye. It had to have been evolved. If it could be demonstrated to your satisfaction how the human eye evolved, would you still believe in the God? Well, yeah, of course I would. That's about the time where the person will say that they're believing it because of faith, represented by that yellow block there. The topic of faith is a major premise in Boghossian's book. And what I found by having all these conversations with folks, when it comes to supernatural beliefs, even the ghost squeaking the cabinet, or the God being real, or that I'm sure that was Muhammad that helped me through that difficult time, these beliefs are almost always based on faith. Almost always. So when that happens, when somebody drops the faith bomb, as we like to call it, it's very important to understand what they mean by that word. It's possible that a person may use the word faith and define it as sufficient evidence. It's entirely possible. So, man, so many times I see atheists get really upset when a theist says that, well, you use faith too. Ask them what they mean by that word. How are you defining it? Is it hope? Is it trust? Is it reasonable expectation? The assurance of things not seen? Let them define the word. I've had a lot of theists get upset and say atheists are defining what this word is for us. Don't do that. Let them define it. Because it doesn't really matter what their definition of that word is. What matters is it reliable to support the belief? Okay. See if it holds up to the scrutiny. Why are y'all laughing? Did the thing fall? Is that okay? That's right. I forgot I had it there. Yeah, it's pretty damn unreliable. Okay. The last type of questions I wanted to point out is the how type. I think how-related questions, these how-type questions, are the most difficult to answer. Atheists, I think, rarely ask theists about their how, and I think theists rarely think about their how, those how types of questions. Here's a couple samples. How did you determine that this belief is true? Is your belief testable in some way? Could you ever discover that you were mistaken? The beauty of SE, as you can see in this model, hopefully, is that these types of questions help identify and probe the foundation of the person's belief, and ultimately help both of us determine if they used a reliable method to support the belief. I want to show you a video here. This is 8 minutes long. It's the longest of the 4 videos I'm going to show you. The other ones are like a minute long each, 2 minutes, something like that. But this is with a woman named Joanna. I met her on a trail in San Antonio. She's just got done doing a hike. This conversation is 20 minutes long, so I start about at the 8-minute mark. There's a little timer going on, so we've built rapport. I've understood what she believes. She believes in a God. I've understood why she believes. It was something that she was taught. It just makes sense to her. And faith is one of those reasons. We've asked a lot of what type questions and why type questions, but a whole bunch of how related questions. And the clip that I'm going to show you is going to focus on those how related questions. And her main justification, as it turns out, is faith for her belief in God. So here we go. Or not. The beauty of editing this is nobody outside of this room and live stream is ever going to know that this happened. Okay, I don't know what I'm doing now.
It's playing.
Is it playing? Increase the volume, or is that me?
And this 100% certainty that God exists is based on a foundation of you being raised and taught something. How can you be certain that it's actually true?
It's kind of like how we were talking about earlier. It is very faith-based.
We're going to definitely have to unpack this faith-based thing.
I don't know. It is pretty broad.
What is a faith-based?
Faith-based is that you can't see him, can't always hear him. You just have to believe that he'll pull through for your favor, and even if it isn't in your favor, that he'll work into your favor somehow. There's a lot of negative things happen in life, but it really depends on which route you take that. But I just think it's something that's inside of you as well, which could go along other religions too, because like being out in nature, I think a lot of peace, but when I pray, I have a lot of peace. Like, I feel like I have more direction, and I pause and reflect more. You know, like I said, it's faith. You can never be kind of like you're thinking about that 90%, but I don't know how else to put it. That's hard. I haven't actually talked that out with somebody before fully, so I don't really have friends.
That's fine. Can I ask you one more question and we'll wrap it up?
Yeah.
So my question is, if you couldn't use faith to conclude that your God exists, to now the 100% level of confidence, if a faith-based foundation wasn't an option for you, where do you think you would be in terms of your confidence that God existed?
Because like I said before, he's not literally standing in front of us right now, if that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah, so you can't see him, you can't hear him.
exactly. A lot of people kind of concrete things in front of them in order to kind of have that 100% faith, or not faith, sorry, 100% insatiable life offer. I feel like if you don't have faith is one of those things where you don't always feel like you're in control. I feel like as humans we always like to have control. And it's another thing where everyone kind of strays off of their path, but I always find my way back. So.
May I ask you one more question? This one, I promise this will be the last one, unless you say, please keep asking questions, but this is my last one. In these conversations that I've had with lots of people, regardless of what God they believe in, and regardless of how they were raised, they will often say that I believe it because of faith. I can't see the God, I can't hear the God, but I believe it. And they are believing in completely different deities. Wildly different. So, my last question to you is faith a reliable way to come to know something to be true if anyone can use it for anything?
Oh, wow. It doesn't change what I believe, but no other religions or other faith. So maybe another way to ask it.
Another
way to ask it.
Is there another way I can ask it? Okay.
Or is it a question, or is it kind of like
We can certainly end it on that point, and if you want, I know you seem like a thinker, and if you want to think about it, and we can, if I never hear from you again, it's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to ping me, I can give you my email address.
Yeah.
I can rephrase it to leave it with you one more time. You can think about it. I'll give you the card. So I suppose the final question that you can either answer now or just think about it would be, if anyone can use faith to conclude that anything is true, why on earth would they want to use that method?
It's good. I'm definitely glad you asked that.
Well, I really like chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was Joanna. Love that talk. So she says something there, I'm going to ponder. When you are using street epistemology and you hear somebody admit that they're willing to slow down and think about that deeply held belief, that's huge. How do you ever get that when you're arguing with somebody and presenting them with facts? It's very hard to do. Okay, street epistemology, well, why should you use it? Well, it's easy to learn. There are so many more resources that are out there now besides Boghossian's book, which came out in 2013. There's the Atheist app, which I had the good fortune of being able to be part of that team and work on it. There's the private Street Epistemology Facebook group. You have to, if you're at all interested in SE, please submit a join request to that. There's the Street Epistemology website and blog. There's SE tutorial videos. Many other people besides myself are uploading content to YouTube and they're live streaming like Dan does. And people are even forming street epistemology groups in their own cities, which is really interesting to see. So it's picking up great. It's also incredibly efficient. SE avoids all that crazy back and forth that seems to go nowhere. Remember the whole piling on instead of peeling back? If you really want to see like a theist and an atheist argue for hours and hours and hours, just keep asking what and why questions. Okay. I love SE because it goes right to the foundation. And I want to show you an example. Now, if you've been watching my talks or you follow my YouTube channel, you may have seen this clip. Have you guys, show of hands, who's seen this before? I see a few hands. Okay. It's so freaking good because it so perfectly illustrates how we can easily get wrapped up discussing a completely different topic that has no bearing at all on the belief. So I want to show this to you here, and I'm afraid to hit play. All right.
It's just the scientific evidence proof is just like any type of drug, the first time you watch it.
Do you value scientific evidence?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If Denzel, we can provide you, if I can provide you, or somebody that follows us closely, if I discovered some scientific evidence that showed that everything that you've just described very eloquently, it doesn't work in that way. They've interviewed 10,000 porn stars and 100,000 men and women, and the overall result suggests that it's a positive. All right? People feel better about themselves, they're living longer, marriages are actually prospering, crime is going down, like across the board. And I don't even know if that can even be measured, but if it could, if there was a reliable study that showed something completely different than what you're outlining just now, would you change your mind on it?
No, I wouldn't, because at the end of the day, I do value like, scientific evidence, historical evidence, and that kind of stuff. But at the heart of it, I'm a Christian, so I live by a set of principles.
So that's Denzel, and I hope you don't get too wrapped up on your view of porn. That's not the takeaway here. The takeaway here is that we could have spent hours arguing about the pros and cons of pornography when his position was not based on scientific evidence, even though he's a very scientific, evidence-based person. He would still hold to his position because he's a Christian. He has a deeper belief that's propping up that other belief. I love that example. Okay. It's very hard to give a talk on street epistemology without mentioning the backfire effect. This was a study that came out in 2009 by a fellow named Nyhan and Reifler. They conducted this study with right-leaning, politically right-leaning Americans who thought that Obama was a Muslim, a secret Muslim. And they started providing those folks with facts to show, well, no, he's a Christian. And what they learned was, what do you think they learned? You can yell it out if you want. They didn't change their mind. In fact, they were even more convinced that Obama was a secret Muslim after they were provided with all that evidence. So the science seems to suggest that arguing with people and providing them with evidence isn't effective. SE seems to be the best way around that. There was another study, this one came out at the tail end of 2006. Jonas Kaplan, Sarah Gimbel, and Sam Harris, they worked together in this really cool study about how we resist changing our minds about deeply held beliefs. This is basically the backfire effect study with brain scan. They put individuals, and this time they picked left-leaning, politically left-leaning people, and they started presenting them information about gun safety, about gun control, facts that contradicted their position on it. And this is what happened in their brains. There's two little areas here, very fascinating. Two areas of their brain lit up, okay? And these areas of the brain didn't light up when they were presenting them with information about contradicting their belief that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, or their views on paper bags versus plastic. It was when it was a deeply held belief. This is where they saw the most brain activity, when they presented them with facts that contradicted their position. Two areas lit up here. The first one in yellow is the insular cortex, and it relates to our deep inward conscious feelings, pretty much our sense of self. And the amygdala here is shown in green. This is the area that responds to threats, physical threats. This brain activity is nearly identical to what happens when you see a bear charging at you in the woods. That's what's happening in a person's brain. And it gets me thinking, wouldn't it be cool to blow this out and see if we can get studies and do research where somebody's laying in an MRI and we're having the same conversation about a deeply held belief, but not presenting them with facts, but using street epistemology. Would the same areas of the brain light up? Would they not light up as much? Do they light up more? Is there some other area that's being triggered? I think that would be really fascinating to do. Okay. I still get frustrated talking to some believers. I try very hard, but if they're so locked in their views, it's difficult for me to even stay calm.
You just don't post those online.
Those sometimes I just won't post. No. I try to upload everything to get a good representation of what's going on. But frustration is very difficult to overcome, especially if you know the doctrine very well. So if you know the Bible really well, and they know the Bible really well, and you're battling these verses back and forth, the frustration is going to be your own worst enemy. And I want to show you this clip. It's with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's on the Joe Rogan show. And I want to show this clip because I want to illustrate that even very smart people can be subject to this frustration. And in fact, completely missing that they did something good. Okay, so these guys are, anyone watch the Joe Rogan podcast? Okay, so lots of hands. Is it not showing? Okay, so I was so excited. I just randomly picked this episode and I was listening to it and I was so excited because they were talking about changing minds. What do you do? What techniques work the best? And Neil deGrasse Tyson was basically explaining Street Epistemology, that he uses it. So I went from this great big high to this crashing low. And I want you to see if you can pick up what brought me down.
This is what I want to talk to you about. What is it about people that there's this very compelling need to find something out that other people don't know, like the world is flat, like dinosaurs aren't real. Like that kind of stuff is very compelling to people.
So what I do in those cases, in the
Bigfoot.
Yeah. So what I do is I would say, instead of debating them, and some of your listeners are listening to this right now. All I would do is say, what is your best single bit of evidence for what you're claiming? And what would it take to show that you're wrong?
All right, well, let's go with a simple one.
So that's what I would ask.
Okay.
And I've done this exercise, and it doesn't work. You know why?
Why?
Because there was a guy who didn't believe we went to the moon. We spent a third of our time in our last session going there. So there's someone I know who doesn't believe we went to the moon. Let me just say skeptical. So I said, what kind of evidence would convince you? He said, images of the landing site of the Apollo missions. So I said, okay, here's a website where we sent, in fact, it wasn't us, it was the Chinese, I think it was the Chinese or the Europeans, sent a probe, an orbiter to the moon so that it was close enough, because ground-based telescopes are not, they don't have the resolution to see the landing sites. But if you get close enough to the moon, you can. It photographed the entire surface of the moon, and there were the landing sites, and you saw the rover tracks and the base for the lunar module. And so that night he went home and found it. Then he came back and said, well, NASA couldn't fake that. Well, I'm done with you. We have no more to talk about. Because he's not ready to be convinced.
Well, that's a weird one.
Because I gave him the evidence he asked for.
Exactly.
That would convince him, and it did not convince him.
That's
so I said, I have no other conversation with you.
I don't know if everyone caught it, but Neil discovered something very important which his opponent avoided answering the questions, and a whole entire audience of people watching the video watched that. It was fantastic. Those of you that don't know David Silverman, he's the president of American Atheists. He's a very big proponent of the firebrand approach. And I think it's worth noting that he views street epistemology as firebrand, even though it's a very friendly, cordial approach. The fact that you're engaging with somebody and you're challenging them a little bit, he classifies as firebrand, which is pretty cool. Interestingly also, I had a chance to talk to him. He was in San Antonio giving a talk, and he said that when he goes around and gives his firebrand talk, audience members ask, where do I go to learn how to talk to a believer? And he directs them to street epistemology materials, which is fantastic. You may have seen Aaron Ra, one of the most aggressive atheists out there, very firebrand. He took time out of his busy schedule to come to San Antonio and learn street epistemology with me, and we filmed that, put that on his channel. I think nearly 50,000 people have watched that. That's huge for a person of his stature, someone that loves arguing with people, to try to hone a different skill in his arsenal. That was huge. And he spent a huge amount of time editing and uploading that video, and that was fantastic. Who here watches the Atheist Experience? I've been watching it for years. Okay, almost every hand in the room. Is it just me, or do they seem like they're asking more how-type questions? It's not just what and why. It's not just what do you believe and why. It's how did you form that belief? And that's very exciting to see. Okay. Of course, believers are noticing street epistemology as well. That's fine. We don't have anything to hide. When it first came out, it seemed like they were demonizing it. You know, a few people were going around showing my videos in church and saying this is like a knockout game where you jump out and clock somebody. It seems like they're now trying to mimic it, like going out and saying, hey, would you like to have a 5-minute talk? Which is kind of interesting. So I think they're getting it. They're understanding that it's effective. It's an effective conversation tool. And that's where, but the second you switch gears and say, now that I understand what you believe and why and the reasons, the how, the method, now let me tell you why Jesus is the right answer. At that moment, it ceases becoming street epistemology. I was at a conference in Dallas about a month ago. There are a lot of these apologists, Christian apologists, that defend the faith and they write these books. And I think they recognized me and they were familiar with my work. And every once in a while I go to the different talks and there were these little hints, like they talk about street atheism. Or they would say, would you like to have a 5-minute talk? People going out and using this kind of interesting method with theists, with Christians, but they're just not using this. They're just not using the Socratic method, right? It's pretty funny. It's kind of interesting how they're just kind of tuning the tune on that. All right. Tools and projects. There are a lot of things going on in the street epistemology group, in the movement, if you want to call it that. I mentioned the book of the Atheist app. There's also the Street Epistemology Field Guide. And it doesn't have to be about God beliefs, it could be about just all sorts of claims about reality. We are recognizing that these conversations are so effective and people are abandoning their beliefs that we need to have a community for them. There needs to be an aftercare component to street epistemology. So people who are abandoning their God beliefs know that there's a community out there for them. And we have to break out of the atheist bubble. There's no reason why SE cannot be used for all different types of beliefs, and we have to move beyond atheism. Okay. I want to go back to our model here a little bit, and I want to talk about a couple of different barriers that can get in the way of having the conversation in the first place. So, I looked this thing all the way from Texas, so just bear with me here. But okay, so barrier. Now, there are very common barriers that can come up, like the venue just may be in a noisy bar. How can you have a conversation there? Or the person makes the claim and they're a 4-year-old kid. Okay, there are certain things, basics. Another thing is consent. You really want to have two willing parties to have this conversation. If you're not willing to conduct it, or they're not willing to be a part of it, then don't have the talk. But I wanted to get into some of the advanced barriers. And the barriers that I'm going to be covering, they're not justifications for the belief. They're barriers. They're defenses to prevent the belief from being examined in the first place. Okay. I've had this one. I was warned about you. I was warned to not talk to you, Anthony. This actually happened on a university near me where a Christian pastor, I think, was people, these students of his flock would come into him and ask him, should I talk to him? And I think he was advising them not to. When you start off on that foot, how can you have a conversation? That's a barrier. One good question could be to ask, is your pastor warning everybody on the campus to not talk to me, or just the Christians? Is he warning the Muslim Student Association? And you can start talking about the value of truth, or the benefit of questioning, the benefit of doubt. Those could all be good ways to avoid that barrier. I've had this one. Somebody said, I would probably kill somebody if I didn't have this God belief. If this God belief wasn't here, I would harm somebody. Obviously, you have to be careful here, okay? Because they need to be serious about it. But there was one conversation I had, and I'll include a link. I'm going to include a link to everything that I'm talking about in the video description. But there was one guy in particular, we talked for 10-15 minutes. He was going on and on about all the great things that he would do for people. He would stop on the side of the road and help them. And then he drops this one on me. Well, if I didn't believe in Jesus, I'd kill somebody. It just seemed like it was just sort of a knee-jerk reaction. And I gently pushed to make sure that he was really serious. And he wasn't. I think he was either conditioned to say it, or it was something that maybe he thought he was expected to say. So people may be saying these types of things just as a defense to protect their belief from being examined. And again, just to reiterate, you've got to be careful here. Like if somebody says that and they're serious, just end the talk. Move on to somebody else. Oh, this one. It's true for me. I could spend an hour on this topic alone, and I'm not going to because we're kind of going long here. But if somebody thinks truth is subjective, that it can vary from person to person, there's no sense talking to them about their God belief. If they think everyone's God belief is true, and everyone believes in all these different gods and they're all true, you've got bigger fish to fry. You've got a bigger, more serious topic that you need to examine. Don't advance until you fully understand what they mean by the word true. Get their definition. See if it's any different from an opinion as opposed to a fact. There was a recent podcast. Sam Harris had Jordan Peterson on, and they met twice so far. In their first episode, the second half, the whole topic was about Peterson's use of the word true and truth. And Harris, rightly, didn't proceed until he understood what he was saying. And I think he got a lot of flack for that. People were complaining that he should have just accepted it and moved on. No. It's a big stumbling block. It's huge. And this whole idea of truth varying from person to person is a big threat. It's a big threat to humanity in my mind. Okay. I just know it. I just know my God exists. I know it because I know it because I know it. That is what Gogol would call somebody who's doxastically closed. They're not even willing to entertain the idea that they're mistaken. It's not a justification, it's a defense. Okay? A possible way around that is to ask them what they think about people who believe in completely different gods, who are just as convinced that they're true. There's a terrorist right now getting ready to kill themselves or somebody else. I guess they would probably be killing somebody else, right? Because they're absolutely convinced that their belief is true, and they're just as confident as you are. That might be just what you need to break through. Okay. I know it, and you in fact know it too. If you know anything, because you know things, then my God is real, because you can't know anything without my God. This is the presuppositional argument, not a justification, it's a defense, and probably the weakest one that's out there. Very frustrating when you encounter it. When I first encountered it, it's like, what kind of argument is this? What's going on here? Just asserting that you know it makes it true? Okay. In that situation, I might suggest asking them when they first decided to use that argument. There must have been a point in their life where they never knew it, and then they were told it, and then they thought it was a good idea. Focus on that period of time. Okay, Boghossian often says that it's all about honesty, and I think I finally understand what he means by that. Think about that talk with Joanna, how honest she was. When a person is being honest with themselves and with you, that's when the barrier goes away. I'm going to go ahead and move this here, hopefully without knocking over my box. Okay. All right. When a person is being honest with themselves and with you, that's when you can analyze their belief. And this is a two-way street. We need to be just as open and honest with people about our own beliefs. All right? There's a chance that a God might exist. I want somebody to use SE on me regarding my position. Okay. We're getting close to the end, and then we'll do the Q&A, and I want to remind you again about the hashtag AskSE. I think Bethany's been looking and probably keeping track of the questions. And I'll take questions from the audience too. Maybe we'll alternate. And I've got some red ones down here. These represent the actions that people take, these motivated actions, because they hold the belief. Now, I'm going to use some negative examples. And as I mentioned at the start, I think people can hold beliefs that are not true and still do good things because of it. All right? But there's nothing that can't be done by secular means. I want to focus on the beliefs that are actually causing harm. These ill-formed beliefs are actually really causing harm. Let's see here. I got one that says, he joins the PTA to promote Bible study in public school. All right? He pushes for abstinence-only education and is against birth control. He'll donate $100 for a theocratic politician. Yeah. He'll dismiss global warming because the Bible says that God will take care of everybody. Word on here? He'll say a prayer instead of making a donation or actually helping somebody. He plans on taking his family to the Creation Museum this summer, and maybe the Ark Park encounter. Go ahead and see that. Okay. If you are remotely interested or worried or concerned about the activities that are happening up here, you should be helping us in the Street Epistemology movement where we're concerned about what's happening down here. And you don't have to be down there in the trenches with us, but support us in some way. Help promote a video, tell a friend, share a story, or actually try to start using it. Okay. These last 3 years have been great because I've learned a tremendous amount of things. I've learned that supernatural believers have insufficient evidence for their claims. I've learned that SE appears to be the best way to help people discover that without closing them down. And I've learned that supernatural claims almost always rest not on sufficient evidence, but on the unreliable foundation of faith. SE has the potential to be a real game changer. I know know that might sound a little far-fetched, but I really think that could be the case. Imagine if we developed a robust aftercare solution for people who are exiting that process. Imagine if SE can break out of the atheist bubble and becomes mainstream for all belief claims. Imagine if graduates from the Clergy Project were given an alternate career path and were training people on SE. Imagine if there was a lesson plan developed to teach this approach in schools. This one is actually near reality. We've been working on that for the last year. We're very close to releasing that. I think that we can drastically improve the world for the better with this approach, a world where people base their beliefs on a body of sufficient evidence and discard unreliable faith. Thank you. Alrighty. I'm going to take a sip of water and then we'll get to the Q&A. And how are we looking on, how are we looking on questions from the internet? Got a few. Okay. You guys came here, so I'd like to take your questions first, so let's go ahead and do that. And if you can, please just try to keep it brief. I'll repeat it back, and we'll get to it.
Who's got a question?
Right there in the back. Yes, sir.
I think one of the things that I've come across the most recently is that there is a firm stance, going to be more of a firm stance, thank you, or a firm stance with people claiming that they have evidence for the existence of God, for the Jesus being the Son of God and being divine. They tend to stop there and try to make it seem that we're ignorant for not seeing this evidence.
Mm.
Of course, they don't have the evidence, but that's usually where they like to end the conversation. There's evidence for this.
Mm.
What do you feel is a good comeback for that, as far as posing another question to them?
So I think the question is, when somebody says that their evidence, and that's a great question, thank you so much for asking that. If somebody says that my belief in this God is based on evidence, then the natural progression, I think, would be, well, I'd love to hear it. Tell me what it is. Tell me what it is. And let's start examining it. And how did you conclude that it's sufficient? How did you conclude that it's reliable? Is it testable? Is it repeatable? This whole idea of what constitutes sufficient evidence is a big challenge, because I do think that theists and atheists tend to view evidence differently. A personal experience is really solid evidence for a believer who thinks that Jesus, was in the refrigerator or something, right? But an atheist might be a little more skeptical about that. I think it's wonderful, though, if the trend seems to be, and I think we're going to start seeing people moving away from faith as their explanation, and they will start saying, I have evidence for it.
That's where it's going.
That's where it's going, and that's a damn good thing. That's a damn good thing. I think people are starting to see.
But once you point out that there's a contradiction between evidence and faith, when people have been relying on faith for so long, and now they're trying to rely on supposed evidence, then to me the response is, okay, well, where does that put faith?
Right.
That you have relied on for so long.
What I found in hundreds of conversations with people will very often say, I believe that this is true because I have evidence. But when you start peeling back the layers, that lower layer of faith is always in play. Okay? It just seems like it's there. And when all those other layers start getting stripped away, that's all they have. They really don't have much more than faith. Okay, that was a great question. Yes, ma'am.
Don Tom's question, they would tell you the evidence is, it says so in the Bible.
Right. Okay, so the person might say, well, the evidence is there, it's in the Bible. Well, then the discussion needs to shift to, how did you determine that what is written in the Bible is reliable? How is it any different? How is it any different than another holy book? There's my neighbor down the street who reads a completely different holy book, who's just as convinced that their God is true because it says so in their holy book. How can a neutral observer tell the difference between the two? Well, I have faith that it's true, will usually be the response. Excellent questions. Yes, ma'am, on the end.
Hi.
Hi.
How do you deal with when you're talking to people who, if they were to lose their faith or start being skeptical, it would not just mean like not believing in God anymore, but due to the community that they're in, it might mean losing their whole support system or losing their job or changing their whole lifestyle. What kind of responsibility do you have?
What kind of responsibility do you have?
Just to offer support options or to keep that in mind when initiating that process.
Okay, got it. What kind of obligation do you have when you have these conversations with folks where you are instilling doubt to be there for them or direct them into some sort of resources? I think we have a tremendous obligation. I would love to see a point where recovering from religion is very tightly working. I think we may actually be heading there, but very tightly working with the people in the Street Epistemology movement so that we just naturally direct people to recovering from religion. If you don't know what that is, it's an organization that is there to chat with people who are doubting. And they don't instill doubt, RFR. They're there to listen to you and provide you with resources. I've been starting to give cards to people with my contact information because I do feel like I have an obligation to be there for them and direct them to resources. And sometimes even know when to pull back because it's too difficult for them. So do no harm is a huge part of SE. We don't want to destroy people's lives. We want to help people. I think I had a slide about that earlier. It really is. We do want to help people that are going through it. And that should always be at their best interest. So yeah. Great question. Yes, sir.
Do you have an elevator speech of defining street epistemology?
What is your elevator speech for street epistemology? I would say that street epistemology is an approach of talking with a person, not arguing with them, to better understand the method they used to conclude that their belief is true. And if that method was reliable, so that they may decide to find better reasons to keep the belief or discard it outright. That's what I'd say.
Anthony, thank you for
Where's that from?
thank you for coming to Chicago and sharing.
Yes.
You had mentioned presuppositional belief. In terms of things you have learned in having these conversations with presuppositionalists, have you any big takeaways or effective questions or even effective outcomes from some presuppositionalists?
Okay, so the question is, what kind of advice would you have in dealing with a presuppositionalist? And again, those folks are, there's different flavors of it. So, but I think generally speaking, they're of the position that they know that their God exists because they know things. And because we know things, we can really just only know things because of a God existing. And they're convinced that they've discovered this in the scriptures and that it's true. I wish I had a better answer to how to deal with them, other than perhaps focus on how they first heard about it and why they think that it's actually true. Or you might say, well, do you have any children? Do you have any young kids? Yeah, I've got a 7-year-old. Well, does that 7-year-old know that the God exists? Or are you planning to teach the 7-year-old that she knows that the God exists? And taking a step back and just learning about the mechanics of how they're coming to this conclusion might be the best way. Frankly, I think the argument is so disingenuous. I really think that a lot of the people that are gravitating to that, by just asserting that it's true, have concluded that they don't have evidence for their belief, and they realize that faith is reliable. And that's the last-ditch effort. That's the last thing that's keeping them in that belief. I may be way off, but that seems to be my view on it. There are a number of people who are engaging with precepts on YouTube and on Twitter. If you tweet at me using AskSE, I can send you links to those folks. I'll put a link in the video to that. They're on the bleeding edge of that, and they're making progress. It's really good stuff. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Recently, someone said to me, "You believe, you just don't know that you believe." And I didn't quite know how to respond, except to say, "How do you know I don't know what I believe?" And we were quickly interrupted, but I was confused by that. Really confused.
Great. Well, you know what I talked about? Also, the question, or I guess the statement is, I've had people say, you believe it. You're pretending that you don't believe it? Is that the gist of it?
No, that I was confused.
Okay. Yeah. When somebody says that, the first thing you want to do is just say, well, how dare you?
Yeah.
All right? But if you're going to be aggressive and you're going to be argumentative, think about the science that seems to be behind that. It's not going to help. Well, definitions, I think, will be very important. What do you mean by believe? What do you mean by know? Get them to define those words for you. Talk about examples. Are there other things that you think that I believe that I haven't disclosed to you? You can even shift the topic from the God to something else that they think that you know. But no, they may say, no, that's the only thing that I believe that you believe. It gets confusing with the words. But yeah, that's infuriating. It's so hard to take a step back. But you have to remind yourself, if my goal is to help a person, arguing with them and presenting facts is not going to help the situation. And sometimes you may even need a day or two just in between, just to decompress. That's one of the great things about the group, the private Street Epistemology group. When we have frustrating encounters, we can relate the stories and get some advice from other people that we may have never thought of before. Okay.
If I could just add to that, what I consider a good follow-up to that response or that question is to start asking people about or throwing out differences between the beliefs of other Christians or other Muslims or other people of the Jewish faith. Ask them why some Christians believe this or why other Christians believe that. You know, why do some feel that abortion is okay and others do not? I mean, there are varying beliefs within the various religious traditions. And if you can start focusing on that, that kind of gets them thinking about, well, yeah, maybe we don't all think the same way. So we don't all have the same beliefs. We have this belief in God, but yeah, but we're still all different. So it's
Sure.
If you start focusing on the differences within the same religious tradition, that can get them confused.
Yeah, as I'm standing here thinking, you could possibly ask if there are things that you believe about her that are true that she doesn't know. You know, kind of turn the tables on her and see how she thinks about that. I want to take this question over here in the checkered shirt. Hi. Oh, Mike.
What is it about the interactions that you had that end in frustration that you feel that you didn't have a successful interaction?
What is it about the conversations that ended in frustration? What didn't work? Usually, the conversations that go off the rails are because we weren't careful on the what type of questions. I made assumptions about what they believed or what their definition of the word faith was. That's probably the biggest part of it. Or maybe getting 30 minutes into a talk and then realizing that truth is subjective. And it's like, kind of like if I wasted 30 minutes talking about pornography with Denzel and then realizing that it's not based on evidence, it's based on his godliness. It's like, those types of things. That's probably the biggest thing is, and I've been experimenting with this lately where before I even get into the what and the why and the how, I have this simple little experiment. There's a simple little experiment where I have these candies in a container, and I want to see if they think that there's an even or an odd number in there. And we start using that as a vehicle to discuss truth. Very simple. Do you agree that there is either an odd or an even number of candies in the container? If they say, well, it could be both, I'm not going to ask them why they think Jesus is their savior. Okay? So that's probably it. Is maybe getting a little too sloppy and rushing through it and making assumptions probably would be the best answer to that question. Do we want to take an internet question?
Sure.
Okay.
Pull it out of my pocket.
Yeah. I should also mention that if you're watching this video and you're not hearing a question being asked that you would like to ask, if you tweet at me using that hashtag, I'll reply to it.
All right, at Why You Worship asks, are there organized efforts to make SE more mainstream?
Are there organized efforts to make SE more mainstreamed? Organized is a tricky word. So we have about 3,000 people in the private Facebook group. That's a pretty good number, and people they come and go, but there's sort of your hardcore group that's always there. There's definitely interest and intent and desire to want to help change things, but there's very little structure, there's very little organization, there's no money. This is all volunteer-based. There's no money behind this. I guess this might be a great opportunity to say, like, if you have an estate and you want to leave it to something, contact Peter Boghossian and set up a trust or something. Like, I think the money could be used. Like I talked about that research project. Wouldn't it be awesome to have people in MRI machines engaging with somebody using SE and finding out what's happening in the brain? I would freaking love that. Okay, so the movement, for lack of a better word, is just very grassroots. It's kind of what you see if you were to go in the private group. There's people who are interested in it, but it is getting the attention of a lot of people. There are a lot of people with expertise in psychology, motivational interviewing, linguistics, video editing, who are interested in what we're doing and they want to support us in some way. So there's no organization yet, but I think that's probably the natural progression of that. Yeah. Great question by Why You Worship. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so the clips that you showed were conversations that you had with strangers. Have you ever used this method with a family member or friend where you had an existing relationship and you already had conversations with them about belief?
Have I ever used street epistemology, not with strangers, but with a friend or a family member who I know, and we've had conversations about it before? I have. I made a blog post about this. It's called Using Street Epistemology with Loved Ones. I'll include a link in the description. And while the approach is the same, understand the why, understand the what, completely get into the how, those types of questions. It's difficult. I think it's harder when it's somebody that you know, because you have a history with them, they know you. They might be like, we always argue about God. Why are you asking me questions about it now? Like, what's changed? And you can just tell them, well, I'm trying something called street epistemology. I want to understand your foundation and how you got there. So it's certainly more complicated, but from a technical perspective, it's no different. But there are unique challenges that make it harder. They know you. They may know your view on the topic, like you may have argued and told them that they're stupid and that type of thing. That's so hard to overcome. But I have I go into greater detail on how to get past some of those obstacles in the blog post. That's a great question. I get that a lot. Like, how do I talk to my spouse about their belief? Yes, let's go, lady in the middle.
I watch your video and I'm very impressed by the tone, the manner that you ask, the way you ask the questions. I find that you are provoking her to think more, even when she left. You probably have changed her. But myself, I can never use SE because I become very excited and very upset and very argumentative. I think if you project if you have the calm tone, it's more convincing. She would think that you're also listening to her point of view, why she was believing. I think that tone and manner makes a big difference.
So I think think the statement is, I think the tone and manner that I see in your videos makes a big difference when talking with believers. I think so. There's 3 years worth of content on my channel. If you watch one of the very first ones that I've uploaded, you'll notice that I'm nervous. You can tell it in my voice, and I'm question. And it took a lot of time to slow it down, to remind myself that it's not a race, you know, and me slowing down and paying attention and listening and repeating only makes the situation better. So a lot of it is just selective pressures from my environment and talking with people that have helped me fine-tune it and tweak it. The other thing I want to mention on that is that, I think it popped in my head, freaking Aaron Ra gave it a try, and he was pretty good at it. You know, when he tried really hard and stuck to it, later the wheels came off, okay, but I'll give him credit. You know, he did really well with it. It just wasn't, I just don't think it's in his nature. And if it's, that's fine. If, you know, there's a tool, there's a place for all these different types of approaches. What I like to tell people who would say, I just don't have the personality to do it. Number one, you could practice and do it. I really do think you could. But number two, if that's not something you're comfortable with, then don't do it. But try to support us in other areas. Like I mentioned before, share a video, tell a friend. You know, try to support us in some way. You don't have to be on the front lines talking with people, but you could be doing video editing, or like what the people here are doing behind the scenes. You know, setting up events like this, bringing in speakers. Help us get the word out about the method. You don't have to be doing it, but you can help us promote it. Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that disturbs me about religionists is that they proselytize. How is this different from proselytizing?
Great question. How is street epistemology different from proselytizing? So I'm going to go with I would normally ask what your definition of proselytizing is, but I'm going to yell it out, and if it's not it, let me know. Telling people what to think.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now I'm proselytizing for street epistemology to you and the people watching the video, because I want you to be aware of it. But when I'm having a conversation with Joanna, I'm never telling her what she should be thinking. I'm asking her questions so that she will tell me. Now, ultimately, it's quite possible that she may discard her belief in her God and become an atheist. And hell, the title of Bogosian's book is A Manual for Creating Atheists. So it's hard to convince people that we're not proselytizing, for atheism. But I don't really think that that's the case. I think it's the natural progression of these types of conversations, right? You can see how effective in the videos that these talks are. So I can definitely understand how someone might see that we're proselytizing for a worldview. But I just don't quite see it that way. I really don't. I think that if you are able to set aside your biases as much as possible and try to be neutral, there is a possibility that Joanna may have a freaking great explanation of why she thinks her God exists. And I'm open to it. But admittedly, within 5 minutes, maybe 10, I can get a sense of all her reasons, and I've talked to other people in the past. And you could argue that because I'm continuing on with the conversation, I could possibly be directing her to some sort of conclusion, you know, that the God doesn't exist or that faith is unreliable. But I do try to let the conversations go where they are, but I am cognizant of that complaint. Ultimately, it comes down to wanting to believe true things and wanting to live in a community where the majority of the population believes true things. So if I'm proselytizing for anything, I would say it's for a respect for the truth. It's for people to value truth and to see truth as objective. That, I think, fundamentally is the motivation behind all of us at its deepest level. Anyone else? Okay. And then maybe we'll take an internet question next. Do we have
I was just wondering if you've noticed any patterns of answers or responses or arguments you get across people of different religions who you talk to.
Have I noticed any patterns of explanations or justifications for a belief across religions? Yeah. Is that what it is? Yeah, that's faith. Whether they believe in Vishnu, or Allah, or Jesus, or the pagan goddess, it's not evidence. That seems to be the common thing. They think they have evidence. When I start asking a few simple questions, they realize they don't. And the last fallback position before atheism, I think, is it's based on faith. And we all know how unreliable faith is. So I think that is the common theme that I see. That being said, I try to remind myself that they may have a better explanation. They may know something that I don't know, and I want to be open to it.
To follow up, do you notice
Please.
any differences between people of different religions and the answers that they give you?
Have I noticed any differences between the different religions? Yes. I would say, and I'm stereotyping here, I would say Muslims usually will say that they know that their God is real because their holy book aligns with reality. You almost always get it. It's so in tune with science. Like it's the scientific method, so therefore my God is real. I get that a lot from Muslims. Christians, it's usually, I hear, and I guess I'm stereotyping across all different age ranges. It might actually differ depending on ages. But with Christians, I would say I get a lot of personal experience, prayers being answered, miracles. Did somebody say feelings? Yeah, feelings. Hindus, it's usually, I was raised that way. I was raised that way, usually permeates all the different beliefs too. That's probably what I would say to that. Yeah, that's a good question. Let's do an internet question. Bethany, we have one?
Yes, at PA Torres Law, who's Andrew Torres of Opening Arguments podcast. It's a similar question from earlier. Do you defend naturalism as a worldview in your encounters? And if so, how do you engage with presuppositionalists?
So I guess what I would ask Andrew is his definition of naturalism. There doesn't appear to me to be a supernatural realm. And even if there was, I'm not exactly sure how we would be able to detect that without using natural reasons. I probably have a lot more questions than I can probably answer, right then and there. But I'm open to the possibility of there being a supernatural realm, but I just don't see any evidence for it. And I don't know, that I can articulate what evidence I would accept. A lot of people will say that, if you make an appeal to supernaturalism, you're basically opening the door for any explanation to be the case. It could be Jesus. It could be invisible ninjas. Jesus rose, or invisible ninjas took the body, or there was some sort of space-time shift, where the body disappeared. So I'm of the position that I try to believe what I can see and experience, and that's testable. That's testable through the scientific method. That seems to be the best way to come to, with a high degree of certainty, know the things that we know. Was there a question over here?
Well, sorry.
That's me doing it.
I just want to see if I have this right. You were saying that, if the belief is held at the level of identity, such as in the case with the fellow with the porn shirt, is all I can think of him, and he said, whatever evidence that you present doesn't matter in a sense. At the end of the day, I'm a Christian. And you said, don't give up on people, but to me, I want to give up. Why should one not give up at that point? If it's at the identity level like that, it's too
So I think the question is, when you encounter somebody that has a belief that seems to be so entrenched in their identity, why don't you just give up? Well, in the case with Denzel, who was very convinced that porn was harmful, we discovered that it wasn't based on evidence, it was based on another belief. Well, if he were to come to realize that his belief in that God is not true, those other ancillary beliefs, those red blocks, those motivated actions, his position on pornography, for example, or probably hundreds of other things, will fall away. I have to remind myself that these beliefs that people hold, and you guys see this too, these untenable beliefs harm other people. They're doing harm. Why wouldn't we want to help? Why wouldn't we want to make the world better? And the process is pretty freaking straightforward. This is not a difficult thing. This is us getting beyond our frustrations and our biases and our anger towards believers. This is an act of compassion, having these types of conversations. Then again, if this isn't your thing, that's fine. That's fine, I understand it. But it really comes down to wanting to help people. Yes? 2 minutes?
No, 2 questions.
Oh, 2 questions.
So I happen to know that there are people with strongly held religious beliefs that are watching the live stream right now, and I'm certain that there will be people watching after this is posted. What would you say to those people right now?
What would I, Anthony, say to the theists, to the religious people who are watching the live stream and watching the video now? I would advise them to please be honest with yourselves about what you believe and be open to engaging in a conversation with somebody who's using this method. If your belief is true, if your belief is really true, you should be willing to participate in a short conversation or 2. Several would be ideal. To understand if you used a reliable method to conclude that your belief is true. That's all I ask. That would be my advice. And by all means, learn this method. This isn't just for atheists. We want every human being to learn this method. I would love it if a Mormon learned street epistemology and engaged with a Muslim, or a Muslim engaged with a Christian, so a Catholic, for example. This is a tool that anybody can use and should use. This tool will help humanity get to truth, objective truth, I think. So that would be my advice. Embrace the method, be honest with yourself, and let's have a conversation. Did you have a question back there, sir? You good?
Well, I have a lot of things going through my mind, but
okay.
I don't know if they are relevant to.
We'll do a question here, and if you want to, you can ask a real short one. I think we have to get out of here pretty soon. We're good? Okay. The Q&A, I love the Q&A portion of it, so let's keep going if we can. Yes, sir?
So even the Pope believes in evolution, from what I've heard anyway. It seems to me that many theists will push to the end of scientific inquiry and say, well, after that, God takes over. Like, say something like spooky action at a distance. That's God out there at doing that spooky stuff. Or when you can't get any further in the scientific investigation, or you don't know what strings are in string theory, well, that's God doing that. You know, they will push you to the end of that, end of rationality with some of those kinds of statements. What's your response?
Okay, so I think the question is, how do you respond to somebody who says that the reason for them believing in something is because we don't know how that thing works just yet? Well, I might point to an example of a time where there was something that we didn't understand how it worked, but we did. There were people who thought that there was a God sending lightning bolts down from Mount Olympus. were they justified in being confident that that God existed because it was unknown? I might start with something like that. If you can identify something that we don't know, we currently don't know how life can arise from non-life. I think that's still open, right? Abiogenesis. If that could be shown to your satisfaction, how that could work chemically, that a life cell, that a cell can form based on all these chemicals, would you abandon your God belief then? Sometimes people will say yes. If I were to see that, that would lower my confidence significantly, or I'd abandon the belief outright. But oftentimes you get the Denzel response. Well, no, I would still believe it. And then you discover that they're not basing their belief on those things. I think you've described the God of the gaps argument, and you get that quite a bit. We don't know how this happened, therefore it had to have been my God.
I've got an awkward question.
Okay.
I'm at Lucas asks, where do you draw the line with people who won't stay on topic? When do you bail when a person won't stay on the rails?
How do you deal with a person who just rambles on and won't stay on topic? You try to interrupt them as politely as possible and redirect them to the topic. It can be tough. There's a fine line between interrupting and looking like an asshole and politely interrupting and redirecting them. So I was having this conversation with a lady who was certain that she could tell when people were going to die. She could walk the hospital ward and she's like, that person would die tonight, and the person would die. You kind of get in these situations where, and she wanted to give example after example after example. And after the third one, I'm like, I think we got enough examples now. Can we get back to how you are sure that that's exactly what's happening? So sometimes you just have to interrupt. You can redirect. You can say, it sounds like you're very passionate about this and you really want to talk about it, but I'm not so much interested in what you believe, and I understand why you believe it, but it's the method you used. Let's start talking about the method. You can just very clearly lay out what your objective is and your goal and your plan. Like, I want to help understand why you think this is true. Let's slow down and take a break and go through it very, very slowly. But if a person is there just to preach at you, that's another barrier. I didn't make a slide for it, I thought about it. I met a lot of street preachers. That's another one of those glass barriers. It's not a justification. It's something there to prevent the belief from being examined. I'm just going to keep rambling on and preaching at you, so I've had conversations with that. It's one of the most watched videos on my channel. Check out the conversation with Caleb. Just boom, 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 just talking, never listening, never slowing down. It's so very hard. Another piece of advice there is to change the venue. So rather than battling it out with a street preacher in front of the Alamo, invite them for coffee. Have them put their books away and their script away and just have a heartfelt conversation about why they think their God is real and how they concluded that it's true. So sometimes a change of venue will help as well. You can also volunteer to move the conversation to text, where you limit it to X number of words. You come up with some rules like, hey, let's have this over Twitter where we're limited to 140 characters. That could be very productive too.
We're going to take the last few questions, maybe 2 more questions if there are any more in the room.
2 more.
If anybody's got questions.
This was more of a follow-up for the young lady in the back on her first question about how we support people as they maybe transition from theist to atheism. I think it's very important. I challenge everyone in here and the listeners. I think you did a great job answering the question, but I think it's important that if you are able to come out and be open about your non-belief, do it. Because they need to know that there are people out there who've gone through the same thing. And I've been fortunate enough to have family and friends who, my life hasn't changed. My relationship with them haven't changed since I've been open and out. And so if you can be, do it. I post subtle things on my Facebook about my non-belief, and it gets little likes from people here and there. And I think it's important for them to see that, whoa, someone who lives in my neighborhood is an atheist. Okay, well, I am too. Maybe I'll go talk to him. So, not necessarily a question, but
It's a
I
great
think it's
point.
very important.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that, and this is going to sound like a lie, but I actually thought about mentioning it, and then the thought went through my head. But yeah, if you can be out, be out, because that helps normalize atheism. There are a lot of people that can't. Just like there are people that don't want to do SE or would feel uncomfortable doing it, there are people that just can't be out as atheists. But if you can be out about it and not be ashamed of the label, then by all means be out. You help normalize it, you help. It's so wonderful. I had an experience where our neighbors moved in and they asked, the first question was, what church do you go to? And I said, well, we're atheists. And they said, is that like Scientology? No, it just means we don't believe in any gods. And they were interested. And I'll be damned if the neighbor, I said, well, yeah, I'm kind of curious, why do you think your God is real? She said, for me, it's all about faith. Okay. But yeah, if you can be out, you normalize it. That same neighbor ended up asking my kids to babysit for their kids and watch their dog, and they, we did holidays together and special events, and they now know what an atheist family, and we're not evil, and that does help. It broadens the community and normalizes it, and it makes it less scary to come out. Yeah, once that crutch of community that's so tied to the religious belief is gone, they're done. They're done. Can you imagine if 50% of our population in the United States didn't believe in any gods and were open about it? Do you think the other 50 would be believers for much longer? Yes, sir. Do you have a question?
For those of us that may dip our toe in the water and start initiating some Street Epistemology conversations, what advice would you give, or if you could even turn back the clock like 3 years ago and go tell the Anthony of that time, hey, do this one thing differently, what's like one of the big things you've learned?
What's the one big thing that I've learned as far as like advice for new people trying to do it? I guess I would say keep it really simple. Don't go out, you don't have to like live stream and record it even. Although there is some advantage to even recording audio with their permission, because you can listen to it later. Like, just be lean and mean. Just, keep it very simple, initiate a talk, practice. Listen, just listen. Make a point to say, I'm going to ask this person what they believe, I'm going to listen to all their reasons, and I'm going to thank them for their time and walk away. I'm not even going to question them. I'm not even going to try to get an I don't know out of them. I want to see if I can permit myself to listen and understand what they say and walk away. Like, just set very simple goals. But back to the resources, there's so many things out there now. There are videos, there's tutorials, there's the app. Of course, there's the group too. So yeah, if you're at all interested in doing that, that would be wonderful. We want lots of people uploading examples to normalize this as well. Just like we're normalizing atheism, we'd like people to normalize asking friendly Socratic questions to uncover truth. That should just be commonplace. Everybody should be using this method. I was saying once that I would love it if reporters, under any presidential administration, use Socratic questions when talking with the press secretary. And if that individual gave an insufficient answer, the next reporter should build off of that and keep that Socratic questioning going. I would just love to see this being so commonplace that we use it in our daily lives.
One more on this side.
Yeah, I would like to know what is the difference between these people who have these religious ideas and what are the people who question scientific fact. We are passing through a very specific time in history in the earth, and there are people who refuse to see the evidence that it was accumulated by hundreds or more years of data from all the cities in the world by different countries, and so what's the difference? There is a denial and there is a denial.
That's a really good question. So I'm going to repeat it back, and if I'm off, let me know. For somebody that has a religious belief or a supernatural belief, and that they dismiss evidence, they dismiss the science, what's different? Why are they doing that?
Not necessarily a religious belief,
Yeah.
just a person who denies the
Right.
evidence.
People deny the evidence.
Data that is accumulated through hundreds of years. So how do you compare the two, the religious and the non-religious that refuse to see the evidence?
Right. So what do you do with people who refuse to see evidence? We saw an example of that with the Joe Rogan, Neil deGrasse Tyson clip, right? Like, that person received evidence, but it still wasn't sufficient to them. I think what you need to do is just keep the talk going to find out why they do think that it's true. There are some people, I think, that they have beliefs because it sets them apart in some way, possibly even morally. They view themselves through a moral prism because they're holding a belief. It's actually virtuous. I'm a better person because I'm believing in this thing. Bogosian, I think, is actually preparing to give a talk today on that topic, where he gets more into that there's probably something else going on that makes holding these beliefs virtuous and thus harder to abandon, even in light of evidence. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. Oh, we're giving away some books. How are we doing that?
We had a random number generator.
Okay. How confident are you that the numbers were randomly generated?
Pretty darn confident, but you never know.
Giving out books.
All right, so I've got them listed here. There are a total of 5 books, and there will be 2 tickets to the Misinformation Conference that we will send out via email, so that's not going to be raffled this moment. So let's see. All right, the first book is going to Kyle Cooper.
Thank you.
And the second one looks like Ray Road.
Those are signed by Bogosian.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna butcher this name. Vicky.
You deserve it. You asked so many good questions.
Gary Stutkus. Gary? Did he head out? It's okay, we've got his email address. We'll let him know. And Duncan Miller. Duncan. Woo!
Thank you.
We're also going to dinner afterward. If you guys want to go, we've got room for as many people as want to go. It's a little place not far from here. Just meet us at the back and we'll let you know where we're going.
If I could just say one more thing, we've got a ton of gear to break down, so if we get like 2 or 3 volunteers to help us, that'll get us to dinner much faster. Or do you want to come back and do it later? Do not? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. We're just looking for 2 or 3 volunteers to help us break down the materials so we can get out of here fast. Backdrop.
Thank you for the speech.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for ushering it. Absolutely. Andrew Torres. That's the guy. He was over talking debates. I think he got into big ruckus with Davis.
Hey guys. Hope y'all enjoyed that. Yeah, that was good, right? I got one of your red cubes. Or if for me, he says prayer
You
instead
didn't win
of
a book, so here, have this red block instead.
It hit my foot.
I got a book. I'm good. Get that to else.
So what's up, y'all? All right, I'm gonna take off. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Y'all be good.
Hey guys, thank you for joining me. Thought that was a really good talk. Tonight's my birthday, so I was in the shower. Of course, that's when they decided to end the stream, but I was listening. So going out to dinner. That's it. Hopefully, more SE from me. Now that this talk is over, I bet we're going to see more of Anthony uploading videos. I totally appreciate you guys checking out the stream here. Obviously, special thanks to Dan for letting us have the stream, and to Chicago Atheist for letting us have the stream, and to Anthony Magnabosco for doing the talk and letting us have the stream. You guys rock. Peace out, and see you later.